In a small bustling city, there stood an old but respected hotel called the Grand Maple. It wasn't the most modern place in town, but it had history, charm, and a staff that worked hard to make every guest feel welcome. But sometimes, not every guest appreciated that. The story begins with a woman named Clara Jameson, a middle-aged black woman with a calm smile, soft-spoken nature, and eyes that seemed to carry both wisdom and unshakable confidence. She didn't look like someone who owned anything more than what she carried in her modest purse. At least, that's what people thought when they saw her. On a warm Friday evening, Clara walked into the Grand Maple and approached the front desk. Behind the counter stood Stephen, a young manager with a pressed suit and an attitude that often leaned more toward arrogance than hospitality. Stephen believed appearances told everything. He judged guests by their clothes, their cars, and their credit cards. Clara greeted him politely. "Good evening. I'd like to book a room, please." Stephen barely looked up, his eyes glancing at her plain clothes, then at the purse she clutched. With a smirk, he tapped on his keyboard and replied, "Well, we do have one room left. But I should warn you, it's our smallest room, and not exactly comfortable. It's the worst room in the hotel." Clara tilted her head slightly, still smiling. "That's fine, I'll take it." Stephen leaned forward, lowering his voice in a mocking tone. "Are you sure? It's really not for someone expecting luxury. But, if that's what you want, then so be it." He slid the keycard across the counter without even offering to call a bellboy. A couple of guests in the lobby overheard, whispering among themselves, some chuckling quietly at the way Stephen had dismissed her. Clara picked up the keycard, nodded gently, and walked away without another word. Upstairs, the worst room was exactly as Stephen had described. The walls had peeling paint, the view overlooked a noisy alley, and the bed frame creaked with every step. Yet Clara sat on the edge of the bed and whispered to herself, "Patience, Clara, patience." The next morning, Stephen and a few employees stood at the reception area gossiping. One whispered, "Did you see that woman who checked in yesterday? The manager stuck her in that awful room." Another replied, "Well, she didn't look like someone important anyway." They laughed, never realizing that appearances can be deceiving. Hours passed, and soon the hotel lobby became unusually busy. A group of corporate staff members rushed in, carrying folders, arranging flowers, and setting up signs. They spoke in urgent tones. "She's coming today. The new owner is finally visiting the property." Stephen straightened his tie, suddenly nervous. "The owner? Nobody told me she was arriving today." He quickly ordered the staff, "Make sure everything looks perfect. I'll handle the greeting personally. We want to impress." Not long after, the sound of heels clicked softly against the marble floor. Everyone turned to see who had entered. It was Clara, the same woman Stephen had mocked the night before. She walked gracefully, dressed now in a simple but elegant suit. The staff froze in shock. Stephen's face turned pale. Clara stopped at the desk and looked at Stephen with calm eyes. "Good morning. I believe you're the manager here." Stephen stuttered, "Why yes, ma'am. Welcome. We've been expecting." "Wait, you're..." Clara gently interrupted, her voice steady and kind. "Yes. I am Clara Jameson, the new owner of the Grand Maple. I wanted to see this place for myself. And I wanted to see how guests are treated when no one is watching." The lobby fell into stunned silence. The staff gasped. Guests who had overheard the previous night exchanged shocked glances. Stephen's knees nearly buckled as he realized who she was. Clara continued, her tone never rising, never cruel, but sharp enough to cut through the air. "Last night, I was given the worst room in this hotel, not because it was the only option, but because someone decided I wasn't worthy of better. The measure of a true manager isn't how he treats the wealthy who look the part, it's how he treats everyone who walks through these doors." Stephen's voice trembled. Ma'am, I didn't mean." Clara raised her hand, stopping him gently. "I know what you meant. But perhaps you can learn what it should mean." She looked around at the rest of the staff. Hospitality is about dignity, about respect, Every guest deserves to feel valued. From this day forward, that will be the standard at the Grand Maple. And as for you, Stephen, the young manager swallowed hard, bracing himself. Clara leaned closer and said quietly enough for only him to hear, I don't fire people for mistakes. I give them a chance to grow. But understand this, you will never again judge a guest by what they wear or how they look. If you do, you won't be here tomorrow. Stephen nodded quickly, his arrogance shattered, replaced with humility. That evening, Clara stood in the very lobby where she had been mocked just the night before. But this time, the atmosphere was different. The staff treated every guest with kindness and care. People smiled, the hotel felt warmer, brighter, almost alive again. As Clara walked back toward the elevators, she passed by a family checking in. The mother whispered to her young daughter, that's the woman who owns this hotel. The little girl looked up at Clara with wide eyes, whispering, she looks like a queen. Clara smiled warmly and bent down slightly to meet the child's gaze. No, sweetheart, I'm not a queen, I'm just someone who believes everyone deserves to be treated like one. And with that, Clara turned and disappeared into the elevator, leaving behind a new legacy, one built not on appearances, but on respect, kindness, and grace. Because sometimes, the person you mock for taking the worst room may very well own the entire suite. And that was today's story. If you enjoyed it and want to hear more powerful and emotional stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more.